Today, our guest speaker is Sthandiwe Msomi, who is a young lady driven by the vision of Africa growing as a global force to be reckoned with. She serves as the founder of the Khanyisa Foundation, a Durban-based nonprofit organization that focuses on community programs centered around education, entrepreneurship, and self-development. She's also a national spokesperson of the South African Youth Economic Council and the chair of the Rethinking Economics for Africa Wits Student Chapter. Her passion for solving modern-day economic issues has led her to studying Bachelor of Commerce or Economic Science degree at Wits University, of which she's in her final year. Sthandiwe Msomi envisions herself as someone who advises world leaders one day on economic and social policies in a bid to create a continent that focuses enables all of its people, even the poorest of the poor, to become a value-adding economic agent. Through her work in the space of economics and policy, she aims to serve communities by building the platform on which young people walk on to improve their lives, their family lives, and that of the entire continent. Girleada is an organization closely related to the contribution that I see myself making on this continent, creating programs tailor-made to capacitate young women with leadership abilities is key to building an inclusive and transformed continent. This is something that Sthandiwe tells us that she can relate with Girleada. Just from her bio, you can tell that Sthandiwe is someone that is futuristic and is a leader that we need for our future as Africans and as African Black women. So join me in welcoming Sthandiwe, our guest speaker for today. Welcome, Sthandiwe. Take it away.
Hi, awesome. Thank you so much for reading out that bio. It's always quite weird listening to people talk about the things I do and what I have managed to achieve, I guess, in a very short lifetime, because I am quite young. But it's also a reminder that the work I do is never in vain. And it's quite an honor for me to be with you all here today. Girleada is an amazing organization. When Unondomiso DM'd me asking me to come speak today about authentic and resilient leadership, I could not say no, because of how important it is to capacitate young women with the ability to become the leaders that they have been destined to be. The world is in need of young females who are driven with vision and passion to make their communities better, to make their country better, to make their businesses better. And I think for too long, the world has operated outside of the system of women. The world has been very reluctant to include women in different spaces, and it's up to confident young women like yourselves and like me, who try to wake up every day and make an impact, to be equipped with the skills and the lessons that are needed to take up space, as Zozibini said. And I hope that today, sharing my journey of leadership will inspire you, give you some directions on where to start in your own leadership journey, and to be authentic along the way. So thank you so much for the invitation, and it's a real honor and privilege to be here today. So when I thought about what authentic and resilient leadership means to me, I had to break it down, because we live in a world where there's so many books and PDFs you can read on leadership and management. It can almost feel like it's a manufactured thing, where you take an MBA course or you take a management course if you're studying a commerce degree at Wits or any other institution. And there's so many theories around leadership that one may forget themselves in the concept of leadership, because apart from the theories and the skills and the management tools that you need to become a leader that translates a vision or a plan into any sort of action, you have to have that skill. But it all starts with who you are. It all starts with your story. It all starts with the events that shape your life, that motivate any inspiration or any vision that you have for any difference that you want to make, right? And so when I thought about it from that perspective, I started to look at leaders who have made a huge impact in the world, but who have led their constituencies, society, and various sectors, I guess, of the world from their own personal experience and from their own personal lives, I guess, and used that to sort of motivate them to want to lead in the spaces that they were in. And I thought of people like Charlotte Maxeke. Charlotte Maxeke, born in the 1800s, she was the founder of the Bantu Women's League, which is now the ANC Women's League. And she was a big leader in the political arena and space in a time in South Africa where Black people in general were dehumanized and discriminated against, but also Black women were not even recognized in upper political echelons. And she broke through and made so many changes and was an activist all through her experience of discrimination and racism and colonization. And she's become a renowned leader in our political history in our country. And I also thought of people like James Baldwin. James Baldwin was born in New York, in Harlem, in the early 1900s. And through his experience of being a Black man in New York, facing discrimination and racism, he then turned that into writing essays and novels and plays. And almost every African American creative these days quotes his work because that's how impactful he's been. And so those people, when I look at them, I see them as resilient and authentic leaders because they've been able to take their own personal experiences and what they have gone through and translated it into a vision and something greater than themselves that people like us today can look to. We can look at women like Charlotte Maxeke or writers like James Baldwin and say, if they were able to make an impact through their own story, how much more can I do in the 21st century when there's so many tools available to me to lead in the space that I am in, right? So those are the people that I sort of thought of when I started to think about my own journey in being an authentic leader. And that brought me to sort of three central pillars that I want to centralize this conversation on, right? And I'm going to try be quick because I only have 30 minutes inclusive of the Q&A session. But the three things that I really want to dive in today, into today and hopefully let them spark your thoughts and your own journey is firstly, understanding who you are in authentic leadership. The second is having a greater vision. And the third is operating in your power, right? So the first point that I want to speak on today of understanding who you are is so important. Particularly when we speak about women, it's crucial that we understand who we are and what power we actually have. In the world, what I've observed and probably what I've experienced is that a lot of the time the experiences of women, the lived experiences of women, the roles that women are, sometimes forced and coerced into taking and operating in aren't really accommodated for either in the workplace, either in management positions, leadership positions, and in various sectors of society. And the best example that I can probably make is women still being discriminated against because of biological processes. You'd find that an employer may be reluctant to put a woman in a leadership position because she may get married and get pregnant and then take time off work, or other things that affect the way women live, right? And as much as we may think that we live in a very progressive world, there still are so many battles that we need to fight in the workplace and in spaces that call for our leadership. And as women, we can't be as effective in whatever leadership position we take if we don't understand who we are and bring all of who we are into the spaces that we're called to. We're often told to man up and be strong and be masculine and macho in order to command respect or to win the respect of the room. But often at times it's the women who embrace their femininity. It's the women who walk in their power. It's the women who are able to still do their makeup in the morning and go into the boardroom and still kill it, right? Who allow for women to take up leadership positions in their entirety and not be afraid of what the world has to say or what your co-workers has to say because of stereotypes and misconceptions that still exist in the world. So understanding who we are as women, understanding the power that lies within us is so important, because not only do we make space for ourselves, but we also make space for other women who will come in after us into leadership positions and into management positions. And that will allow them to also exist in the fullness of who they are, as opposed to having to suppress certain elements of themselves to accommodate the man's world that we live in, as we're told. But also understanding who you are is so crucial, because we live in a world where people want to pursue things that may have impact or may not have impact. But often at times, the families we're born into, the communities we're born into, the friends we have, and the conditions that life presents to us often has hidden clues about what it is we're supposed to do, right? And I'll make an example from my life and how I think my authentic leadership journey started. I was born in Durban. I'm raised in a community called Montclair from two parents. My dad is born from Mlazi and my mom is from a town called Pongola on the north side of KZN, right on the Swaziland border. And my parents got married and had me, and they were sort of the first generation of their families that were able to make it to a normal middle class type of lifestyle. Shortly after, after democracy and after economic policies were implemented to try and get Black people into the economic sphere of our country and to get them to participate in work and in other sectors of society. And so them being the first generation to get good jobs and to live a good middle class lives meant that they had to be the ones to take on the responsibility of taking care of their siblings. My mom and dad put so many of their siblings, my aunts and uncles, through school, from primary to high school, even through to university, paying for their registration fees, and ensuring that everyone around them was taken care of, right? And I grew up observing that. I grew up observing my mom paying for her sister's registration fees to go to medical school. And my aunt now happens to be a medical doctor, and her whole life has changed, right? And so realizing that and observing that from a very young age, I don't know if we have someone who has their mic open. Okay, cool. So just observing that from a really young age taught me the importance of philanthropy and generosity, and always ensuring that our lives are not just for our benefit, but for the benefit of everything and everyone connected to us, right? And that's where the genesis of starting things like Khanyisa Foundation, of being involved in activism and students' leadership and student issues began for me, because that was the environment I was born into, and that's what I saw, right? And so I'm telling you guys sort of the story or this narrative to get you to look at the environment you were born into, to get you to look at the people that you had around growing up. Often God doesn't put those people in our lives for no reason, or those environments in our lives for no reason. The challenges that we face and experience are often clues that give us a direction as to where our lives should go, or what it is that we're meant to be doing with our lives. And that's why it's so important, if you're going to be an authentic leader and someone who is resilient in whatever space they choose to lead in, to understand your history, to understand who you are, to understand your past, so that it informs the choices that you make. It'll inform what you choose to study in university. It'll inform what job you choose to take up in future. It'll inform who you surround yourself with and what causes you decide to give yourself to. So often when people ask me, why do you have Khanyisa Foundation, or how did you become the national spokesperson of SAIC or any other initiative that I'm behind, I always root it to my family history and what I observed growing up, and the values that were instilled in me that have now informed what I've chosen to devote my life to doing, right? And so if you're going to be an authentic leader, it's very important for you to sit down with a pen or a paper and just draft down points or clues from your upbringing or from your history that will inform what passion lies inside of you. And from there, you can choose to lead authentically, because you don't just have some textbook that's telling you about leadership, but you have a real life experience that has shaped what you have chosen to lead in, and what you have chosen to lead other people in as well. And so understanding who you are is so important for those reasons. And the second part of my talk today is having a greater vision. Every leader is a leader because people who follow them feel as though that leader has a vision for the future that is better than the present, right? And the best example that I can make is our own liberation struggle as a country. The reason why so many Black men and women were able to sacrifice their very own bodies and blood at the hands of the National Party and the apartheid government is because they believed in the vision that our liberation leaders had. They believed in the vision of Nelson Mandela. They believed in the vision of Walter Sisulu. They believed in the vision of Robert Sobukwe and Pixley Kasem and all the leaders that we had. They believed in the vision of women like Charlotte Maxeke. They believed that there has to be something better than what we are living out today. And that commitment to that appointment to democracy and freedom drove people to the point of death. It drove people to the point of exile. It drove people to the point of dangerous situations, of even leaving their families, just to try and pursue this thing called liberation and freedom, which we ended up achieving, right? And in our country right now, we find ourselves in a crisis where so many people are excluded from the economy. We find ourselves in a crisis where there are so many social ills that are paralyzing people from even trying to make a difference or to improve their lives. And it's all because we don't have leadership that has enough vision to take us to a future where young people have jobs, where young women are not discriminated against, where Black people are valued, not just in our country, but in the world, right? And so if we learn from our predecessors and what they committed to, the biggest takeaway when it comes to authentic and resilient leadership that actually yields results and makes a difference in the lives of people, whether you're running an NPO or whether you're running a business, is that you have to have a vision that is greater than the present. So think about yourself. Think about what it is you're passionate about and what difference you want to see in the world. Perhaps you want to see more women become CEOs in the mining industry. Perhaps you want to see more young people in your community go to school or access education. Perhaps you want to see your family become better and rise above generational issues that have affected generations in your family. Those are all visions for the future that give you hope for a tomorrow that is better than today. And to get anyone to follow that, you need to convince them that what I have in mind is better than what you're living. And that is when you get people to commit to wanting to assist you in building your organization or in getting those initiatives off the ground. It takes a lot to get people to work with you. And I can speak from my experience from running an NPO with virtually nothing. And I remember getting a message from a girl that I once went to high school with. She was, I think, in grade 8 or 9, and I was in matric. And she asked me, Sthandiwe, how did you get funding to start Khanyisa Foundation? Who did you talk to? What did you do? And I had to tell her that I started Khanyisa Foundation with virtually nothing in the bank, with no funding, no external anchor sponsor to sponsor the projects that we do or did in our community. But all I had was just a vision for seeing the township community that Khanyisa Foundation operates in better. I had a vision of seeing young people have conversations about the importance of education. I had a vision of seeing young people have conversations about entrepreneurship and developing above social circumstances and ills. And all I did was sell that vision to people that I wanted to get on board. And I remember the first project really that I did was a food drive during the wake of COVID-19. And I reached out to people that I knew from my own contacts and networks, and on social media as well, to talk about the fact that COVID-19 has resulted in so many job losses. People are hungry, poverty has become even worse than what it was in the past. And in people seeing the need to actually mobilize and to get resources together, I was able to collect food parcels through the help of various stakeholders and get it delivered to families in need in the community that we worked with, right? And so in your journey of becoming a leader and running organizations, to get people on board, to get resources on board, and to mobilize all that you need. Sometimes you won't have the capital to start it all, but that's not what you need. All you need is the vision that drives what you want to do. And if it has good intentions, if it's well thought out, if it's well planned, if you've got the right people to support you, often at times you'll see the vision lead the way and make the way for the impact that you want to make, right? So when you have time, whether it's today or next week or whenever, sit down with a pen or a paper and write down the vision that you have for whatever you want to start. So if I'm assuming the women here have businesses or nonprofits, or you're an academic or a leader in your space, look at the space that you occupy right now and think to yourself, how do I want the space to be left better because I existed, because I was here? And write it down. And from that, think of things that you can do in the immediate term to start putting that vision together. And also remember, your story, who you are, what motivates you. And that brings me to the first point that we spoke about earlier, and integrate that into the vision that you have, so that whatever space you choose to lead in, you do it authentically and resiliently. And resilience is so important when we talk about leadership, because leading is hard. Leading anyone, anything, even leading yourself is difficult, because there'll be days when you don't feel like going to that meeting, or there'll be days when you don't have the resources, or you're trying to put something together, but nothing works out. And that's when resilience drives you forward. That's when resilience gives you the staying power to see that vision that you have for that organization you're leading, or for that nonprofit you're leading, manifest and come into fruition, right? And often at times, I personally have learned that seeing my journey and how I was brought up in my story, and also seeing the impact of economic exclusion, not only on people around me, but family members of mine who weren't exposed to opportunities, often motivates me to keep on advocating for economic reforms. It motivates me to keep on studying, to get my degree on days when it's hard, because I understand that this thing is not just a concept or a problem that I read about in the textbook, but it's a problem I see every day when I talk to young Black people who aren't exposed to opportunities. And me continuing to serve in my nonprofit, or to serve in the South African Youth Economic Council and other spaces that I'm called to, becomes easier, because there's a personal sort of impetus that keeps me going in that space. And that's when you build resilience. Resilience is built when your motivation for wanting to lead is authentic. And that's why it's important to understand who you are and have a greater vision for whatever space you want to lead. And so the third point, I think, that is important in building authentic and resilient leadership is operating in your power, or knowing your power, understanding that you actually have power. And I was reading a quote by Beyonce this morning, and it said, or she said rather, don't try lessen yourself for the world. Let the world catch up to you. And that is all linked with you understanding how powerful you truly are. And I think it's important for us as women to have this conversation, because women are typically raised to be nice. Women are raised to be polite. Women are raised to be accommodating to the world and to the people around them. Women are raised to constantly be the gift that keeps on giving to everything and everyone, whether it's your family, whether it's an organization, whether it's your friendship circles or relationships. And in as much as that may be the natural role that a woman assumes because of how nurturing and caring we are, it often makes us feel powerless, and it often makes us feel like our lives and our destinies are at the mercy and at the hands of everything else around us, right? And it took me a long time to understand that I actually do have power, that I can exist outside of getting permission from the world or from men or from friends or from family or whatever other figure is in your life that sort of takes up a level of importance. Because you can only get up and start that business or start that nonprofit to advocate for whatever you want to advocate for when you believe that you actually have power and that what you have to say in whatever space you're in matters, because it will make a difference. I often see too many women base their self-worth, their self-esteem and confidence levels on what the world is going to say, whether people are going to accept me or not, which is something that men usually don't care about. It's why men will be the first to volunteer for something or put themselves forward for projects, or to go forward in something, even if they don't even know how to approach it, how to do it, even if they don't have the skills to do it. And something I suffered from for the longest time was asking myself, do I have the competence to take on this task? Do I have the skills? Do I have the connections to do it? Like, will I be able to do this? Or sort of suffering from what they call imposter syndrome, right? And that all leaves you feeling powerless. And if you're going to be a woman of impact and someone who is authentic in their leadership, things like that can't be what inhibits you from making a difference. So it's very important for you to realize and understand that as you are, whether or not you come from a rich family or not, or whether or not you have access to certain networks and pools of people or not, that's irrelevant. You right now in your form have the power to do anything, literally anything that you want to do. The biggest dream that you can dream, you can make it happen. The biggest issue that you want to solve in the world, you can solve it. You may not be able to do it entirely, but the belief in the power that you can do it is what will actually drive you forward, and actually leading authentically in whatever space that you're called to. So I think, just to wrap it up, because we should get into a Q&A session very, very shortly, it's very important to take the three sort of things that I've mentioned, and the 3 points that I've mentioned are just a few lessons that I've learned in my leadership journey of understanding who you are, of having a greater vision for yourself and for the people that you're going to lead, and to understand your power. Those 3 things combined are enough to set the whole world on fire and to change the world as we know it today. And so I hope to leave you with the confidence to step up today and lead in the space that you've been called into. I hope I've left you with I guess the impetus to stand up and lead authentically from your story. You don't have to lead drawing from other people and who they are and who the world tells you to be, but leading from your own personal experiences and your own lived experiences is what is going to help us change the world and make it better than what we found it. So thank you guys so much for giving me the time today to share with you. I hope that you've taken away a few things on your own leadership journey. And I genuinely can't wait to hear how the ladies on this call have been able to rise as well to the call for them to become authentic and resilient leaders. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sthandiwe. Honestly, I couldn't think of a better way to start a session on resilient leadership, especially with your examples on things that we can relate to, examples of resilient leaders from right here at home, our own backyards in South Africa, people that we know, we've heard of, and that really made an impact. I hope that it also made an impact on the other girl leaders so that they can also have a close to home type of example. And just going off the 3 things you mentioned, understand who you are in leadership, have a great vision, a greater vision for that matter, and operating in your power. I truly loved it. Girl leaders, I'm going to open the floor for 2 questions. So are there any people who have questions? We are ready to take your questions right now. Any questions? Kia, please take the floor.
Yes, I have a question for Sthandiwe.
Yes.
What I want to know is that what exactly kept you going when you started your organization? Because mine is only 3 months and I feel like giving up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to a point whereby I feel like I made the wrong decision in the team I have. I just feel like I'm alone and that nobody understands my vision. So what exactly like kept you going for you to not give up?
Just out of curiosity, what organization do you run? What do you do?
It's a youth empowerment organization. So
Okay.
my focus is lobbying and creating public dialogues on social issues affecting the youth.
And how long have you been running the organization? Oh, 3 months. You said 3 months.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That is such a good question because I started my nonprofit. It was 2020. As I said, I started it from nothing, right? And I've recently become part of a youth economic council, and we also do a lot of lobbying in the area of government and to business leaders, right? What I've learned on the journey is that sometimes it may be hard to convince people of what you have in mind up until you do the work and they see the results of that work. And that's why it's so important to start with what you have and to start from where you are. Because the biggest thing that may be overwhelming sometimes is having this big vision of the dialogues you want to have and the policies you want to implement, right? But not knowing where to start can feel so demoralizing. And then you just procrastinate and you leave it and you're like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. And you don't do it tomorrow. And then it just doesn't work out, right? But if you start from what you have, and start with what you have and who you know in your circle of influence and in your spaces. This could literally be from hosting a Twitter space just from the comfort of your phone to collaborating with people that you went to high school with or your high school teachers and doing a project in your school. Those are things that are within your immediate reach. And when you start doing that and building from the ground up, you will have the physical evidence of the fruits of your labor. You'll have the physical evidence to take to the team members or the people that you have in your team, and that so that they can see what it is that you have in mind, right? Because in as much as leaders, we have a vision, it is your responsibility to communicate that vision to someone else. They may not understand it and they're not obligated to, because it's not their vision, it's yours, right? And so you have to find creative ways to communicate that. And the best way to communicate that is to take what's in your mind and to put it either on paper or to put it in action and build up that portfolio of yours so that people can actually have an idea of this organization that you're creating and what it's supposed to do. And often people can easily buy into that, whether you're trying to reach out to a sponsor or you're trying to reach out to a person to work with you or collaborate with you. It makes it easier for them to sort of trust that what you're doing as well is operational and it's effective. And they can also see themselves making a contribution in whatever you want to do. And then I think the second thing, especially when it comes to getting people on your team or getting partners to collaborate with, is pick those people carefully. Pick people whose work is aligned with what you're doing, because then when you're bargaining to try to get them on board or to get the project going, it's easier because they also have personal reasons or experiences that draw them to the space of advocacy and youth dialogues and things that are within that space. And because you want to be around people who are like-minded. If you get a partner to work with, whether it's a company or another nonprofit, you want to get someone who understands the issues, understands understands the urgency of the issues, and then is able to work with you from there, even if you still have to convince them of what the vision of your organization is. And that also makes your life a bit easier when trying to get the confidence to also continue going on and building your organization from the ground up. So I hope that helped.
It really does help, actually, put a lot of things into perspective. Thank you.
I know, all the best.
Thank you so much.
Can we have a second person? Anyone have a second question? Your leaders?
We have a question from Mamelo.
Yes, Mamela, please take the floor.
Yes. Oh, hey, girl leader. Thank you
Hi.
for the amazing share. Thank you. But I have a question for you, that what advice can you give someone to understand their power? Because you said your third point was, understand your power, but what can we do for us to actually do that, to get to a point where you say, okay, I understand my power now, therefore this is my position, this is where I'm going.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, because it's something that also took me some time to sort of understand and live in. And you can't really understand something if you don't break down what started it, or the fundamental beliefs behind whatever you believe about yourself. So we're all raised in different environments. Some of us have the privilege of being raised in environments where your parents from you're young tell you that you're beautiful, you're smart, you can achieve anything you want to achieve. And others, unfortunately, you're born into environments where maybe your parents are too busy trying to put food on the table to be busy telling you that you're amazing. And you're left to building your confidence and self-esteem and self-worth and an image of yourself to yourself. And we live in a very cruel world. We live in a world where it's full of broken people who go out into the world and they break others out of their own brokenness, and you end up being the collateral damage of someone who has never told at home that they're good enough or they're smart enough, and they project that on you, right? So before we can even reach our own level of consciousness to understand our own power, we need to look back at our own childhood and our own history and try and understand what has informed what we believe about ourselves today. And when you do that and you retrace how your mother and father engaged with you, how your siblings engaged with you, how the friends you had when you were younger engaged with you, you're able to sort of get an understanding of where the confidence issue started from, where the self-doubt issue started from, where the imposter syndrome started from. Where the belief that you're maybe not pretty enough or smart enough started from, right? And when you do that analysis and you just have an honest reflection on your history and your past, you're then able to attack the enemy. You can't attack an enemy that you don't know, because you'll just be shooting from different points and you may not be aiming at the target. So the importance of that work is super important. And sometimes people say you must get a therapist to do that, which is great. I would highly recommend that, or get a friend or someone that you trust to have these conversations about and talk about it and be open about it. And then when you understand that and you are aware of it, it becomes easier to sort of shift the narrative for yourself mentally. It becomes easier to tell yourself a new story about what you believe about yourself. Because if you understand the extent to which your past or your history has done damage to the concept that you have of yourself, you're then able to say, never will I ever allow those beliefs to inform how I behave. You're able to tell yourself a new story, and that obviously affects how you show up in the world. You're able to show up in a more confident way. You're able to show up in a more resilient and authentic way. And personally for me, I can remember in high school, and I think in primary as well, always having confidence issues. And not feeling as though I fit in to, the circle of my peers or those I had around me. So I always had that issue when it came to social circles. And that affected how I could show up. That affected how I harnessed my power. I would often then dim my light or my passion for advocacy or for social issues because I don't want to fit into the crowd or not be too, I guess, far off from the social norms that were around me at that time, right? And then when I did the work work on what informed that behavior, why do I lack the confidence in this area, I then was able to say, I can't allow these issues to rob the world of the impact that I need to make. I can't allow these issues to rob the communities I work in of the opportunities that my activism could bring them, right? And then from then onwards, I had to do the work of affirming yourself every day, reading books and listening to podcasts and surrounding yourself with friends and people who help you harness that power as well is so important, so that you can actually show up every day, understanding who you are and living in the true element of your power. So I hope that gives you some directives of where to start.
Thank you so much, Sthandiwe. You really have set the foundation for our session today. And I couldn't have thought of a better foundation, believe me. And right now we're going to go into our breakout rooms. Feel free to join us should you feel like it. But before we do that, I would just like to thank you on behalf of all girl leaders and our leaders at Girleada for availing yourself and bringing us such valuable information on resilient leadership, because it's part of our leadership journey, part of our authentic leadership journey for that. So thank you very much, Sthandiwe, and have a beautiful day ahead.
Thank you so much, ladies, and enjoy your breakout session. Thank you.
All right.